Well, hello, everyone. To be able to see you, I have to take my glasses off, and then to read, I have to put them back on. But welcome. We're thrilled to have you here this afternoon, and greetings and welcome to the Carroll C. Arnold Distinguished Lecture. My name is Roseanne Manzik, and I'm first Vice President and very honored to be here with you and representing the National Communication Association. So this lecture recognizes the late Carroll C. Arnold, who was a professor at the Pennsylvania State University, a well-known author of many important works, editor of communication monographs, and a master teacher in the field of communication. We honor his memory by hosting this annual convention event, an event that's sponsored by Pearson, a longtime supporter and friend of NCA. Before introducing this year's Arnold's lecturer, I would ask that we pause for a moment of reflection. NCA asks that you join us in acknowledging the indigenous communities and their elders, both past and present, within not only the Seattle area, but Washington State as well. NCA acknowledges that it is often gathered upon unceded lands and that those gatherings manifested the exclusions and erasures of many indigenous peoples. We acknowledge the grave harm that colonialism brought to these lands, in particular the erasure of both indigenous and African identities via slavery and via racist laws that segregated all peoples into binary classifications of white and black. This acknowledgement demonstrates our commitment to beginning the process of working to dismantle the ongoing legacies of settler colonialism. So it's now my great pleasure to introduce this year's Arnold lecturer, Dr. Tina M. Harris. As many of you know, Dr. Harris is a scholar of international and interracial communication with particular interests in mass media representations of race and racial social justice. She holds the prestigious Douglas I. Manship and Dory Maynard Endowed Chair of Race, Media, and Cultural Literacy at Louisiana State University, the first position of its kind in the nation. Dr. Harris also is serving as the Vice President of the Southern States Communication Association. Her wide-ranging work has had profound impacts on our discipline's examination of intersectionality and our interrogation of how representations of race shape both public discourses and private interactions. To illustrate the astounding breadth and depth of her scholarly contributions and Dr. Harris's commitment to translate theory into practice, let me give you just a sample of her publications from just the last few years. First, on pedagogy in the academy, survival skills, surviving and thriving in academic white spaces, race and ethnicity in the classroom, identity politics of blackness in the mass communication classroom and beyond, dismantling the trifecta of diversity, equity, and inclusion, the illusion of heterogeneity, performative activism, inauthentic allyship in the midst of a racial pandemic. Next, on politics and popular culture, They're Playing Dirty, Kamala Harris, Identity Politics, and the Plight of Professional Black Women. Bridgerton, a case study in cultural critical approaches to racial representations in popular culture. Dear White People, using film as a catalyst for racial activism against institutional racism in the college classroom. It's Handled, the complex intersection of race and gender in Scandal's Olivia Pope. Next, on social relationships and practices, communicating identity within multi-ethnic, multiracial families. Girlfriends, There Through Thick and Thin, African-American Female Sisterhood and the Quest for Happiness, and a book in progress, which we very much look forward to, Dismantling Racism, One Relationship at a Time. And did I mention that was all just in the last few years? Right. In addition, Dr. Harris has also served on over 20 editorial boards and has been recognized with over 30 awards for her leadership in scholarly arenas and for being a voice of conscience in our discipline, including, again, from just the past few years, the 2019 NCA Critical Cultural Studies Division Distinguished Scholar Award, the 2019 NCA Robert J. Kibler Memorial Award, the 2020 Scholar in Residence for the Center of Critical Race Studies at the University of Houston downtown, the 2020 Central States Communication Association Callaway Thomas Inclusivity Fellow, and the 2020 NCA Francine Merit Award for contributions to the lives of women in communication. Yes. So truly, we're so honored, and so it's such a fantastic opportunity for all of us to have her with us today. And so what she's going to do today is weave together for us these dynamic threads of scholarship, service, and activism in an address that's certain to challenge us to act anew at the intersections of race, communication, and social justice. And Dr. Harris's lecture is entitled Intentional Transformation in the Midst of Change. Please join me in welcoming our 2021 Carroll C. Arnold Distinguished Lecturer, Dr. Tina M. Harris.
I love y'all too. Darn. I haven't even gotten started. My makeup is far away from me. Oh my goodness. All right. I'm going off script just a little bit, but I just want to thank you all, for coming. You all did not have to come. It was not required. You're not getting extra credit. It just means a lot to me to look out there and see all of your beautiful faces. So thank you all for coming. And I'm going to try and stay on script, like we tell our students. So here we go. I'm truly humbled that our first Vice President, Dr. Roseanne Manzik, has chosen me for such an honor. I hope that the words that I share with you today will inspire you to embrace the spirit of this lecture titled Intentional Transformation in the Midst of Change. Before I begin my actual speech, I want to pause and thank many people who are special to me and have been integral to who I am and where I am at this very moment in time. My mother, Pastor Mamie J. Smith, my father, the late Reverend Joseph Harris, my mother's husband, Dwayne Smith, my siblings, Greg Harris and his wife, Teresa, who are right here on the front row, my sister, Sonia Harris, and my younger brother, Ken Harris, have all been on this journey with me from day one. The same is true for my god sisters, best girlfriends, sister scholars, and brother scholars, who have stood by me. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to sniff in the microphone. They've all stood by me as well. I won't name everyone, as I'm sure my nerves will get in the way, and I will inadvertently miss someone. This helps me to avoid having to use the old Southern saying, charge it to my head and not my heart. Individually and collectively, oh, I lost my place already, goodness. Y'all just have me so overwhelmed. Well, thank y'all. I forget where I was, okay. I was immediately struck by surprise, awe, and honor when I was asked to give the Carroll Arnold lecture. Shortly afterwards, my heart sank, and I thought, oh my God, what have I gotten myself into? What could I possibly say that anyone would want to hear? Those feelings of uncertainty and anxiety quickly subsided as I was reminded why I was invited to give such an important lecture at such a time as this. My comfort and excitement continued to come as the NCA office asked me to provide the title of my lecture. The title, Intentional Transformation in the Midst of Change, seemed to capture the spirit of the last year for me, the country, and the world. It resonated with me on so many levels. Today, my hope is that my talk will offer us all hope and strength during what have been some incredibly bleak and trying times. More importantly, I hope that we all, as academicians and citizens, will seize the day and choose to be agents of transformation in every space we occupy. The spring and summer of 2020 introduced us to a tumultuous time as a country and world. We were in the early stages of a health pandemic, followed closely by a racial pandemic. That's my brother Ron. COVID-19 was running rampant throughout the world, and racial injustices in the US relative to police brutality and death reached an all-time high. And as we all know from the news today, it's still alive and well, unfortunately. I will not go there. The dual health pandemics were placing us all in a very precarious state. Underlying conditions and exposure to this invisible boogeyman had everyone on edge because we had no idea of where COVID-19 originated, how it was contracted, and how to avoid catching it with 100% certainty. The health pandemic was further exacerbated by the racial disparities in who was most affected and at greater risk of dying became abundantly clear as the death toll continued to rise. There was also an unprecedented increase in the number of hate crimes against Asian American and Pacific Islanders. They were victims of the morass of hate that had been stewing for years, decades even, and boiling over. They were caught up in a torrent of racial epithets, too crude to repeat. Xenophobic slurs flowed like rivers, engulfing our Asian American and Pacific Islanders, sisters and brothers, drowning them in unfettered aversion that, sadly, had reached new heights. The racial pandemic was equally traumatic because it was a reminder of the horrors of systemic racism that have been woven into the very fabric of the US. Indeed, there are many good things about being a US citizen. However, it would be foolish to ignore our sordid past and its impact on every facet of who we are and what we are as a country. These dual pandemics have taught us many things, one of the greater lessons being to prioritize being intentional in our purpose to change, in our response to change. I must believe we have all been forced to recalibrate, reevaluate, and reorganize how we are engaging with life in both our professional and private spaces. One way many have chosen to describe this response is to pivot, which is a word I personally believe has been overused, I hate it, and misused, and has worn out its welcome. Reflecting on the ways that people chose to respond is more reflective of what I'm calling intentional transformation. The word intentional first resonated for me when I was on an ICA panel with amazing women scholars from diverse racial, ethnic, ideological, and methodological backgrounds. We collectively paused while discussing the conference theme of engaging the essential work of care. We focused on care that prioritizes amplifying marginalized voices and experiences and how we cultivate and activate care as scholars and people. Eventually, intentional became our buzzword. We all seem to agree that we have either always believed or have come to the realization that all of our actions are intentional, that they should be intentional. The urgency of being intentional was underscored by both pandemics. They reminded us of how, or they taught us that everything that we do, be it for work or pleasure, must be driven by a purpose. There must be a greater purpose behind our choices. Moreover, those choices lead to outcomes that should lead to some type of transformation. This was the breath of fresh air and hope I did not know I needed. This was when, for me, the phrase intentional transformation was born. I'm sure I am not alone when I say I vacillated along an emotional continuum as I attempted to come to grips with our new reality. I was struck by the need to make sure everything counted and had purpose. There were three areas within which people and I seemed to become intentional: our physical, emotional, and mental health and well-being. At the beginning of the pandemic, I don't know about you all, but I found myself snacking more than usual, giving in to little indulgences, only for them to hold my waistline hostage and force me to get into a self-designed fitness program, which I'm still working on. And one thing that I noticed that I bought, I don't know about you all, but I went and bought food that I hadn't bought in many years. I stocked up on ramen noodles. Nothing wrong with ramen noodles. I got a case of Spam, and I went and got another case last week. I don't know what's going on, but here we are. I'm still struggling. My emotional well-being was at risk because of the toll that everything was taking on me, not just in 2020, but across my lifetime. My mental well-being was being taxed as well. In addition to trying to process the gravity of everything that was going on, I was also trying to remain focused on my professional responsibilities and commitments. Trying to manage and balance all three has been certainly difficult. However, while my experiences with each are not by any means unique, they are unique to me. These three areas were spaces where we all seem to direct our attention and make concerted efforts to respond in healthier and more effective ways. Frankly, we are all becoming more intentional and strategic in how we approach those areas of our lives, no longer taking them for granted. An underlying theme of the disrupted professional normalcy grounding my lecture is the increased attention given to the imposter syndrome label that surfaced in popular discourse during the dual pandemics. Whether it was in response to a continued devaluation of Black, brown, yellow, female, non-binary, or LGBTQIA+ bodies, or a general uncertainty about one's professional and intellectual prowess, many historically marginalized people seized the opportunity to reclaim our worth and value despite societal misconceptions of who we are. This phenomenon is what I'm calling internalized identity validation. Internalized identity validation is the act of unabashedly accepting and embracing one's skills, talents, and excellence, here got in my mouth, pardon. Okay, excellence, despite efforts to trivialize and devalue them in systemically oppressive spaces. The pandemics reminded us and continue to remind us that we are valuable beyond the work that we do. We are also valuable because of the work that we do. It is thank you. It is transformative and has great potential to change the world. We have worked very hard to be here and have earned every seat. We have earned our seat at the proverbial table. There is room for everyone. We just need a bigger table. Our intentionality placed many of us in the unique position of shedding the false ideology and embracing all of our magic. We did and do deserve to be in the places and the spaces we occupy, and we should never forget that. This is the true meaning of internalized identity validation. By extension, intentional transformation works in concert with internalized identity validation in that we must understand first who we are before we can help others to come to the same realization for themselves. Intentional transformation is what I'm defining as purposeful change that leads to better versions of ourselves for the benefit of others. Again, Intentional transformation refers to purposeful change that leads to better versions of ourselves for the benefit of others. The idea of intentional transformation is reflective of a personal mantra I have held close to a lifetime. I've always made it a point to make sure that every interaction, connection, and relationship I have with others has a purpose. I believe that the purpose of these interpersonal exchanges goes beyond being transactional. These exchanges are driven by a desire and a commitment to contribute to helping someone reach their full potential along their journey in life, wherever it may take them. If I cannot be of help to them for whatever reason, then I will surely step aside. This approach to life has now morphed into intentional transformation, both for others and me. I try to be very purposeful in everything that I do, both personally and professionally. I have perfected neither, as I am still a work in progress. Since that conference, I've paused every single day to ask myself in one way or another how the scholarship that I'm producing is making a difference in the world. I have learned this through the fatigue we have endured since December of 2019, the month when COVID was slowly ravaging the world. The life of an academic is complex, yet essential if we are to be a world full of critical thinkers. We dedicate our lives, per se, to teaching, doing research, and engaging in service that in some small way will effectively change the world. To be that catalyst for change, we must commit to being intentional, acting on purpose and for a greater good. Even in those moments when the fatigue is overwhelming, when we are vulnerable and weary, we must find the resolve to press on in our fight for justice, truths with a small t, and understanding. We must remain committed to renewal and transformation. Being the qualitative scholar that I am, I decided to conduct a thematic analysis of what I'm calling macro and micro moments that have occurred throughout my career that inform my position on intentional transformation in the midst of change. These moments have stood out for various reasons, the main one being that they were exemplars of events that could have easily derailed me from my path and my purpose. I do not always recognize it at the time, but as the saying goes, hindsight is 20/20. Self-reflexivity has led me to 4 observations I hope will inspire and encourage each one of you. There we go. I hope will inspire and encourage each one of us here today to stay the course and be the agent of change we hope to see through the work we have committed ourselves to doing. Regardless of our status, methodology, or theoretical leanings, we all have important and valuable contributions to make to the communication discipline, whether it be through our teaching, research, or service, or all 3. If 2020 has taught us anything, it has been that we must look outside of ourselves and recognize those moments and opportunities when we can give back. More importantly, we should become comfortable prioritizing ourselves in healthy ways so that we can fulfill our purpose and what that entails. Thus, we must commit ourselves to intentional transformation in every aspect of our lives and who we are as people within and outside of academe. Intentional transformation can be achieved if we do the following: do not grow weary in well-doing, remain intentional in everything that we do, recognize and manifest the power within, and lift as you climb. Before I expound on these 4 actionables, this is just the first hour. No, I'm just kidding. No, it's not. I want to contextualize them by sharing 2 memorable experiences, but not in a positive way, that I've had along my journey that have been pivotal in helping me retain my resolve as a critical thinker and scholar, and more importantly, as a Black woman in a world riddled with systemic oppressions. These 2 experiences are emblazoned in my memory and my heart. The first occurred in high school. I vividly remember anxiously waiting in my seat as our English teacher canvassed the room to return our papers. The assignment was to write an original murder mystery. I remember taking pen to paper, and this before there were computers that were accessible to people. I remember, as I crafted an intricate story, I was so proud of it. It was one of my proudest moments to date. As I sat in the classroom, I was excited to get my paper because I knew it was really, really good. I just knew it. I was shocked when the teacher asked me to step out into the hallway. Naive me thought she was taking me out into the hallway to commend me for my amazing work, that she was taking me out there because she didn't want to embarrass my peers because of the work that I did that was so exceptional. Instead, she accused me of plagiarism, point blank, asking me where I copied it from. Again, computers did not exist for the everyday person. I was in shock that she thought I wasn't good enough or smart enough to write something so well. I was sickened that my integrity and blackness were simultaneously being questioned. She held my paper hostage for another week, and while I waited anxiously and patiently, I remained troubled that she reduced me to a stereotype. I became even more troubled when I finally got my paper back and saw that after what seemed to be an eternity, she assigned me a grade of an A-. If she thought my work was so great, then why give me a minus? We all know why. We all know why. The second experience of note occurred several years later in my first semester of my master's program. That was the toughest semester of my graduate career because I was getting acclimated to this new world I would eventually come to love. I worked hard that semester and tried desperately to grasp the concepts and theories that were incredibly abstract. By semester's end, I was glad to have made it through. I was glad to have done well enough to have survived. My relief and excitement and pride were cut short when I received a handwritten letter from one of my professors. Again, being naive, I thought she was taking time to applaud me for making it through my first semester. I remember opening the envelope and seeing her beautiful penmanship. I immediately thought, wow, she took the time out of her schedule to write me. This has to be a letter of support. Instead, it was a scathing 3-page letter of condemnation in pink ink, I might add, and she had beautiful penmanship, telling me in no uncertain terms that I in no way belonged in graduate school. Every curve of her letters, the dot of an I and the cross of a T, dripped with metaphorical blood ripping at my soul. She attacked my very being, the core of who I was and who I was to become. I never shared with the faculty what she had done. I suppressed this horrific encounter because I knew it would not define me. And when I tell people that story, they said, "Where's the letter?" I said, "I don't know. I don't know if I shredded it. I don't know if I just threw it away, but I never kept it, and I'm glad I did not." I suppressed this horrific encounter because I knew it would not define who I am, and it would only propel me, to my destiny. Fast forward 15 years. Imagine the irony when I was approached by the same person at NCA, no less, and invited to apply for a faculty position at her university. Oh, yeah. As she attempted to engage me in idle chit-chat, I made it my goal to keep this interaction short and empty. We had nothing to talk about. I was also having flashbacks to the letter that she had written to me so many years ago. She clearly had selective amnesia and the gall to now see my worth. I declined the invitation and quickly shut down our interaction. I left the encounter at peace, beyond confident in who I am. I never needed her validation. I tucked away her letter in the recesses of my mind, never to return. I don't remember what I did with the letter, but in hindsight, I'm glad I never kept it. The totality of this experience, this encounter, reminded me that I should never, under any circumstances, let anyone else determine my destiny. More importantly, I should never, ever, ever let anyone derail me from the path for which I am destined, and neither should you. While my story is not yours and yours is not mine, it is a testament to our resilience, our ability to survive difficult circumstances. The summer of 2020 reminded me that there is a greater purpose in the work that we have been called to do, hence the 4 actionables that I previously mentioned. and you can see them on the screens. Individually and collectively, these actionables contribute to intentional transformation on both the individual and communal level. They function together to create intellectual communities that produce deliverables with practical implications for spaces and places outside of the ivory tower. In short, our work should move us from theory to practice. Our scholarship should be transformative and be of some direct benefit to others. Yes, it can be cathartic if we use our intellectual capacities for personal healing or intellectual growth. A greater goal should be to identify the ways we can use our research to change the world and various spaces that we occupy. Towards that end, we should commit ourselves to digging deeper and doing what the late statesman and civil rights activist John Lewis called us to do: get in good trouble. Don't grow weary in well-doing is the first actionable item, and it's something I have heard all my life. As a preacher's kid twice over, it was a scripture that was meant to encourage us to stay in the fight, even when things get tough. I don't know about you, but I have been in enough fights, thankfully not physically ones. Never fought, but they last a lifetime. Those fights have taken on many forms, such as slights in the grocery store, racial microaggressions in the classroom, interpersonal infractions from colleagues, being excluded intentionally or not from lunches, and so many more. They have weighed quite heavily on me, as yours have on you. They have left mental and emotional scars as a reminder of what I have gone through. While I have occasionally revisited those micro and macro moments, I recognize that the bigger lesson of staying the course is not just for my benefit, but for that of others. In our profession, it is very easy for us to be siloed by others or to place ourselves in silos as we write our manuscripts and study for classes. That is the very nature of much of the work that we do. We are holed up in our home and university offices, providing deliverables such as a journal article, book chapters, and books, hoping that our work will reach audiences who will get us and appreciate the arguments we are advancing or the phenomena that we are unveiling. This intellectual work can be exhausting to our minds, our bodies, and spirits, especially when coupled with our teaching responsibilities, service to our institutions, and the discipline and mentoring and social support that we provide to others. We can be depleted by the very things that we commit ourselves to do, which is why we need to prioritize intentional transformation. This requires that we take a step back and recalibrate on a regular basis. I'm going to do that at 8 o'clock in the morning on Monday, week of Thanksgiving. How can we be of help to others if we are not taking care of ourselves? How can we get into good trouble if we are too exhausted or overwhelmed? We need a reminder that transforming our discipline into one that is healthy and robust requires commitment and dedication by us all. This means we actively work to break the cycle of toxicity with our students and colleagues, offering words of kindness and hope as we mentor and guide. This means getting in good trouble. The second actionable is being intentional in everything we do. This means being deliberative and thoughtful about everything we choose to commit ourselves to. When we decide to take on service roles or research projects, we have different motivations for assuming these additional roles and responsibilities. Some do it to stroke the ego because they want to be helpful or to satisfy the check mark on an annual review or a promotion case, or because it is hard to say no. And it's hard for me to say no, but I'm going to start saying no 8 o'clock Monday morning. Whatever the motivation, it is vital to our well-being as people that we be more judicious regarding the things that we commit to doing. Frankly, I'm preaching to the choir when I say this. In theory, we can all probably agree that if we commit to doing something, then it is intentional. We intend to do that which we have promised. Summer 2020 showed us that our responsibilities can be overwhelming for us and probably have been for some time. Factor in the stressors associated with the dual pandemics, and those responsibilities take on new meaning. We must now recalibrate and prioritize those things that are meaningful and of value. 2020 taught me that I really need to give considerable thought to that which I have been asked to do or am expected to do. This means being intentional in the task I'm willing to take on and the relationships I'm choosing to form. In other words, this actionable is referring to learning to say no, and it's okay to say no. If you say no, then I'm pretty sure they're going to find somebody else to do the work. And as a Black woman, I'm taxed with an inordinate amount of service requests that I agree to do, and unfortunately, it is to my detriment that I run myself ragged, much like many of you. Working until we are fatigued and overextending ourselves is not the answer, and it certainly is not a badge of honor. Note to self. Thus, we must do, as Congresswoman Maxine Waters famously said, reclaim our time. Reclaiming our time requires prioritizing our responsibilities while also doing things that allow us to disconnect, recalibrate, and recharge. Additionally, we need to be committed to showing ourselves and the others grace, thus being more forgiving. After all, we are only human and we can only do so much, which means we need to avoid situations where we are at risk of overextending ourselves. Doing so will also serve as an example to others who are trying to navigate these very ambiguous spaces we occupy and share. They will learn the value of prioritizing self and others in a profession and world where humanity is oftentimes taken for granted. Thus, adopting these behaviors will alter our intellectual and emotional landscapes, helping us produce scholarship that extends beyond the four walls of the proverbial tower, the ivory tower. We have very likely recalibrated and given considerable thought to the meaning of life and our role in it. The two pandemics have taught us well, and that this is a time for renewal and transformation. The third actionable is recognize and manifest the power within, which requires that we acknowledge, appreciate, and bring to life the skills and talents that reside within us. All of our lives, we have been socialized to follow the path that others have believed was best for us. During our formative years, some of these people include parents, teachers, and older relatives with lived experiences and wisdom that can help us reach our full potential. They see talents and strengths within us that we probably did not realize that we had. This was the case with me and my mother, who saw something in me and strongly encouraged me. Well, I'm just going to break script. She didn't strongly encourage me. She did, but she also told me, "You are going to college." I did not want to go to college, and here I am 400 years later still in academe. I wanted to be a cosmetologist. I wanted to do makeup, I wanted to do hair, and I wanted to do all that, and my mom was like, "How can you do that if you can't even stand in the kitchen and wash dishes?" I mean, I washed the dishes, but I always had to prop my leg. Oh, I have a skirt on, I won't show you. But I had my leg propped up on my knee and bent over doing dishes. And so she was like, "If you can't do that, then you can't stand up and do somebody's hair." And I said, "You know what, you're right." So I applied, got in, and here we are. Thank you, Mom. Okay. So she encouraged me to go to college. And I'm glad that I fulfilled her dreams, and I did not know I was fulfilling my own. The vision that I had for my future was different. I don't even think it was a future. At minimum, it was next steps. Graduate high school, go on to the next thing. I wasn't clear where my next steps would lead me. Thankfully, my mother saw so much more in me, and she pushed me. I had others in higher ed who ushered me along the way through my various degrees. They offered me the support and encouragement that I did not always know I needed. The mentors and allies, or co-conspirators, also provided fertile ground that allowed me to truly recognize this power within, my gift as a critical thinker and writer, and to be confident in that, regardless of how many obstacles would come my way, and those obstacles that would also raise their ugly heads. I've experienced micro moments throughout my life that could have derailed me, but thankfully I'm still standing and I'm here to tell you my truth. Those moments should be life lessons that inspire us to be better, to do better, and to become who we are destined to be. Realizing and manifesting that power within means seeking and determining those opportunities and relationships that will take us to the next level. Granted, it does benefit us to network, connecting with people who can be instrumental in our advancement to success. However, we must do so with caution and discretion. It is important to avoid appearances and acts of being exploitive at all costs. Academia is much like other professions in that it is a culture to which we all must adapt. For example, there are considerable differences between being an undergraduate student and a graduate student. Each has different expectations, and the only way to navigate either path is through trial and error and experience. Oftentimes, there is someone more senior who can help guide you through the process through informal and formal mentoring. The same is said for junior and senior faculty. In all those scenarios, there are cultural norms and expectations we are expected to ascribe to, and depending on our confidence level, self-esteem, and support network, we might doubt our worth along the way, which is expected. We are completing a number of firsts and want to perform well. It is par for the course. However, this process is sometimes tainted by people who erect rites of passage akin to hazing, all to weed out the undesirables, which are typically the historically marginalized. The proverbial other. This is not to say that this is true of all universities and colleges. However, there are public and private narratives that confirm this truth. If we all took a moment to reflect on our own journeys up to this point in our careers, I'm sure we can identify several micro moments where a person or people actively attempted to thwart our progress for whatever reason. These experiences are a testament to everyone's character. They reveal who you are or who you can become under pressure, like a diamond in the rough, at least for the target. For the perpetrator, it reveals their weaknesses and insecurities. Their cracks are beginning to show. For the target, this is a proclamation, though from an unlikely and unwanted source, of their present and future worth. The target gains further clarity of who they are because they have a better understanding of who they are as a person of integrity. They are unapologetically themselves. They are stronger, wiser, and better for those micro moments. To be clear, micro moments do have the potential to destroy the human spirit, but we must make it our priority to never let someone else's toxicity and negativity define who we are. They only have power over us if we yield it to them. Never, ever, ever give them your power, ever. Be intentional. Rest in your confidence, your truth, your power, and your magic. Never let anyone steal your shine. Do the same for those you teach and mentor, passing on a legacy of affirmation and encouraging internalized identity validation will ultimately break the cycle of toxicity that has become all too common in the ivory tower. The fourth and final actionable is lift as you climb. This phrase is something that we have heard all before. It originated with social activist Mary Church Terrell, who in 1896 founded the organization, the National Association of Colored Women, and the organization used it as its motto. The phrase means that a person, as a leader, intentionally provides support and nurturance to others, thus making their growth and success a priority. While this might sound self-serving or narcissistic, it is the exact opposite. Engaging in those kinds of behaviors requires the investment of emotional and mental labor that people oftentimes do not have. As leaders, we are more seasoned and well-versed in the industry, which should mean that we have the experience, wisdom, and expertise necessary to help our junior colleagues and scholars navigate academia. What is more important and is essential is that we have the heart and sincerity for providing that lift to others as we travel along our path. We must be willing to provide them, within reason, what we know they need while putting aside the self, expecting nothing in return. I view this practice as my responsibility as a leader. It is something that I have done for as long as I can remember. It is an aspect of mentoring that, while necessary, brings me joy and pain, But again, it is not about me, and I will explain in a moment. My joy comes from seeing the faces of mentees or colleagues when they have an aha moment or realization that they are on the right track or they love what they do. I am serving as a doula, someone who is trained to help someone give birth to their goals and dreams. There is nothing more exciting than seeing the pure excitement on a student's or colleague's face when they realize the invalidity and emptiness of the words the naysayers and haters spoke about them who made them stumble along the way. I choose to speak life over people, offer them hope and encouragement rather than attack their self-esteem or belittle them in any way. I believe that is what a good mentor does. At the very least, that is what a good person does. I firmly believe the saying, people come in your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. It typically applies to friendships and can certainly be used to categorize our professional relationships. This categorization process, if used properly, can help us achieve the fourth actionable of lifting as we climb. To do so, we must put aside ego so that we do not override or overshadow the needs of the more junior person. This does not mean that we let people take advantage of us, disrespect us, or act unprofessionally. Instead, we recognize our purpose in their lives and eventually determine or negotiate the boundaries and norms for those relationships. Each relationship is intentional and driven by the need for change to get them to the next level. We are lifting as we climb. We lift them by prioritizing their ambition of becoming a better scholar, theorist, methodologist, and critical thinker. We lift by supporting them if their future takes them outside of academe. We lift by helping them determine the next phase of their journey, whether they know what that might be or not. We are there to help them prepare for the birthing of their future self. Oh, I like that. As doulas, we stand by their side and help them care for the talents, the gifts that are growing inside of them, and if necessary, we help them see them to fruition. Through the 4 actionable items I have presented to you today, I hope that we all are inspired to be agents of change in the various spaces that we occupy. The dual pandemics have left us with many lessons and will surely teach us many more. Let us remember to prioritize intentional transformation in our response to the changes that will continue to come. Let us commit to internalized individual validation so that we can be better versions of ourselves. 2020 has shown us the value of looking outside of ourselves and recognizing those moments and opportunities when we can give back. Towards that end, we must be comfortable prioritizing ourselves in a healthy way so that we can fulfill our purpose and help others along the way. All of these efforts require that we commit ourselves to intentional transformation in every aspect of our lives and who we are as people within and outside of academe. Let us remember the actionables and hold them close to our hearts. Do not grow weary in well-doing. Remain intentional in everything that you do. Recognize and manifest the power within, and lift as you climb. Over the last 23 months, I've found myself regularly engaging in self-reflexivity and appreciating the work I have been doing for nearly 31 years. I started my graduate school when I was 12. Yeah. So interracial communication is my passion. And like many of you, I have reevaluated and thought about why we do what we do. One takeaway has been to preserve my longtime commitment to moving scholarship from theory to practice, which has cemented like never before. Countless emails, texts, and conversations with colleagues, friends, and past and present students about the racial unrest of 2020 produced all the evidence I needed to dig deeper and continue doing what John Lewis called us to do: get in good trouble. Getting in good trouble means different things to different people, and for me, it means remaining in the fight against racism and other forms of oppression. We have all been called to a fight, a different fight. That is the beauty of the diversity of humanity. We can all do our part in our small corner of the world. My fight has been against racism because I am all too familiar with the material consequences in my personal and professional lives. My field of experience is very similar to others in this room and throughout the world, and I personally believe I would be remiss if I refused to get in good trouble doing the right thing. I certainly do not have the perfect roadmap, but I believe there are multiple ways to get there. I continue to find different routes to get there, which is very refreshing and inspiring. The routes are a smaller part of my larger path. They are also a form of renewal because they are a constant reminder that our work is never done. They inspire me to remain entrenched in the essential work that paves the way for true transformation in an ever-changing world. I encourage you to reflect on your own roadmap and future destinations in the months and years to come. For me, I will spend the rest of my career doing my part in dismantling racism one relationship at a time. Thank you. Shut up. Thank you.
So thank you, everyone, for coming this afternoon. And please come back tomorrow. Enjoy another day of the conference. 5 o'clock here tomorrow, we have our presidential address, as well as our association awards ceremony, and we hope to see you there. But before everyone disperses for a wonderful evening, please join me one more time in a round of applause for Dr. Tina Harris. Thank you.
Y'all, I feel like Sally Fields at the Oscars. Y'all like me. You really like me. Thank you.